Hello, if you're new here, thank you and welcome to my channel. If you're returning, thank you and welcome back. A couple months ago, I was talking with a friend in the local heavy metal community about doing some promotional photos for his upcoming musical project. He showed me some images he liked, and we went from there on discussing the shoot. He then asked me a question I've never really been asked before. He wanted to know why I didn't work more in color instead of black and white with most of my work. The answer I gave him was that, in my view, color photography often goes in and out of trends in processing, whereas I feel, and I stress this is my opinion, that black and white photography will stand the test of time, while color will continue to ebb and flow with the trends. That may seem like a flippant answer, but it's not one I just pushed out for the sake of brushing aside the question. Like all things, there is more to it than just avoiding trends. I was working toward an associate's degree in management when I took a photography course at a local community college to satisfy a fine arts requirement. This was a black and white film class, and it really opened my eyes to the possibilities of photography. It reawakened the artist in me that had lain dormant since my days in the U.S. Air Force. I took the next photography course the school offered. This course dealt with color film. I quickly found out that color film, and color photography in general, was a much different beast. Color film photography is also much more unforgiving if you don't get it right when you're exposing the frame in camera. Where the black and white course taught me about light, the color course taught me how colors can be affected by light. It also taught me something very important regarding color photography. Colors are subjective to how the person physically perceives them. This would become important to my later studies of photography. As I mentioned in a previous video, our brains see color before they see detail. We immediately sense danger when we see red. Blood pressure and adrenaline levels rise in response, and we become more alert. This is why stop signs are always red. They need to grab our attention, and we need to be alert for anything that might jeopardize our own or another's safety. One early exercise I did in a course I took in art school was to take a photograph and superimpose a color over it. The purpose was to show how a different color changed the perception of a given image. As we can see with the example image on your screen, each color provides a different feeling when presented. As such, color can become a tool of the artist to manipulate the viewer. These ends aren't necessarily nefarious, but they serve to steer the viewer into the mindset of the artist. The abstract expressionist painters in the mid-20th century understood this. Artists like Mark Rothko and Jackson Pollock eschewed critical analysis and instead wanted the viewer to find their own meaning in a work, and the use of color served to stir feelings in the viewer. That's not even getting into the amount of thought graphic designers put into the use of color to further the commercial ends of their clients. There are also the cultural implications of color. A notable example of a cultural difference is funeral attire. In the West, we tend to wear black to funerals, while in Asia, they tend to wear white. In photography, one of the things that determines color is the white balance of a scene. Simply put, the white balance determines how the colors in the image are going to be presented to the viewer. In film, the white balance of a print depends on how the filters in the enlarger are set, as well as the paper being used. It's easy to go through quite a bit of paper in order to get the colors quote-unquote just right. In digital photography, we have two opportunities to manipulate white balance, one in camera and the other in post-processing. But there's more to white balance than just clicking on a neutral gray point in Lightroom or whatever post-processing application you use. A big part of white balance needs to account for the environment in which the photograph is to be displayed. When I was in art school, I set the white balance on the images of my semester project in one room. The prints were displayed in a different room, where the temperature of the light was slightly different. Since my prints matched the room where they were printed, the colors were slightly off in the critique room. The professor who pointed this out was a master when it came to printing, so her words carried a lot of weight. You can employ various items to help get the colors as close to quote-unquote real as possible, but the above variables do remain. So yes, color can present difficulties when working with it. But black and white presents its own unique set of challenges that are not always easily overcome. The chief among these is achieving tone separation in the middle gray areas. While that has gotten a little easier with digital tools, In the film days, printing black and white required just as much experimentation as color printing. That's not to say color photography doesn't have its place. There are situations, such as photos used in investigations, where color is of utmost importance. It can be hard to discern blood from other fluids in a black and white photograph. Even in more artistic uses of photography, color still has a place and can be another tool the artist uses to communicate to the audience. In the end though, most color photographs, safe snapshots, when it comes down to it, are more about the colors than the actual image. In black and white photography, the absence of color information forces the viewer to take in the image itself. If you can't create a compelling image in black and white, your image will quickly be forgotten. In color photography, that same quote-unquote boring image can be elevated if the colors are well done. All one has to do is look at the work of Pete Turner. His images are often very formally composed, and many contain no real discernible subject, but those colors and the way they grab the viewer's attention are what draw people in. Now we can circle back to the answer to my friend's question. The use of color does follow trends. In the 1980s, we had bright and vibrant colors. In the 1990s, the color palette muted as the cultural attitudes, at least in the United States, began to shift. Bright colors returned to the fore in the 2000s, while in the 2010s the trend was toward more simple colors and color schemes that were at times minimalist. The 2020s saw a stunted growth and is only now, in 2023, starting to move forward, so we can only guess which way the trends will go in this current decade. These trends are reflected in much of the color processing we see in recently created photographic images. Different genres of heavy music also have their own aesthetic themes when it comes to the respective visual components, which are often also subject to trends. In the end, my goal with the Houston Metal Project is to create compelling images that stand the test of time. I want them to draw the viewer in without the distraction of something that often doesn't add to the information gathered by the viewer. I've been indirectly told that people often process in black and white because they don't know how to use color. For those people, in many instances, it's been easy to negatively critique their color images both in technical and artistic terms. Also, in my experience, the time spent crafting a good black and white image is comparable to that spent crafting a color image. Finally, I see a lot of people in concert photography use black and white as an option of last resort. There are two quick points that can be made against that practice. The first is that the power of photography relies in the series as a whole. A black and white image among a series of color images disrupts that flow, and almost never for the better. The second is if that an image can't be made to look good in color, it often won't look good in black and white. One final thing I've been told about black and white versus color when it comes to concert photography is that people will go black and white in order to cover up technical flaws such as slightly misfocused and/or incorrect exposure. Given what we know about color, I often find the opposite is true. In black and white photography, details are key. It's much more difficult to hide in-camera mistakes when processing black and white, whereas with color images, these mistakes may not be noticed by the casual viewer unless they look closely into the image. After all this though, I do produce color concert images in some instances. I do this because there are images I believe that can have close to the same impact as their black and white versions, but they are far and few between. Part of my journey as an artist is to push myself, and doing these color images challenges me to create images that don't rely on color for impact. I hope to get there one of these days. Sometimes though, experimenting with colors is just plain fun. Here are some I created while experimenting with duotones. In the end though, it's going to be up to the individual artist to do what he or she thinks is best for their practice. I am simply laying out why I do what I do, because it's not always as simple as, I just like it this way. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to meet one of my living heroes at a gallery that represents him locally. This was an opening for a body of color photography he had recently created, and it was his first after a career of producing exclusively black and white images. I had the chance to ask him why he was doing this now. His response was that he finally realized he didn't need to have the colors perfect. He just needed to have them perfect for the image. This was a very fitting response, especially since I could tell by looking at his work that he was way out of his comfort zone. And that's something I would challenge everyone to do. Step outside your own comfort zone and give different methods and approaches a try. They may not work out for you, but you will learn and grow from the experience, and your further work will be stronger. Before we conclude the video, this part will be dedicated to something I started in the last video, but didn't comment on until today. From here on out, a portion of each video not labeled as short will contain a featured artist and a quick commentary on their work. In this video, we are featuring the work of Mo Penders. Mo was born in El Salvador, the child of a white North American father and a Salvadoran mother. They earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Photography from the University of Houston School of Art in 2015, and has since been featured in many exhibitions in the United States. Their work explores a range of issues, including identity, transness, migration, and the involvement of the United States in El Salvador's Civil War. Medium and large format film are the media of choice for their work, and it shows in the incredible detail contained within the images. Mo currently practices in San Diego, California. A link to see more of Mo's work can be found in the description below. So what do you think? Do you prefer color or black and white photography, and what is the basis for your preference? Let me know in the comments below and let's talk about some art. Also, if you're an artist and would like your work considered for inclusion in future videos, please contact me at my social media or at the email address associated with this channel. Also, don't forget to check out some more of Mo's work. Finally, if I have earned it today, a like and a subscription will go a long way in helping to grow this channel. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll meet again soon.